afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to all. For those who don't know me, I am Camille Benoit. I'm the manager of Délice Network, and I'm your moderator for this afternoon. So we're thrilled to welcome you in this beautiful venue. What a venue, this coal gas factory, filled with so much history. We are also very happy to welcome our members and our guests who have logged online to follow us from various parts of the world. For some of them, it's actually in the middle of the night, so thank you to them. We would have preferred them all to be here with us, but due to the pandemic, they had to stay at home, but we are still honored by their presence online. For them, for the people who are connected and unable to be in Izmir with us today, I would recommend we say a warm mahabat, which is hello in Turkish, to our friends online. So on 1, 2, 3, merabat. Thank you. So for the first words of introduction, I am very happy to welcome on the stage the former Minister of Culture and Tourism of Turkey, who is now Deputy Mayor, Professor Dr. Suat Çalayan. He will say a few words of introduction to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And dear guests, members of Délice Network, that's a nice word, Délice. On behalf of Mayor of Izmir, Mr. Tunç Soyer, I greet you all with warm feelings of Izmir. And we are very happy to host you here. Here is the goddess, here is the queen of Mediterranean. Also, here is the heart of Mediterranean cuisine. It's very important. It's full of vegetable Mediterranean cuisine. 2.5 months ago, we host here UCLG Cultural Summit. It was a very successful one. And while returning home, the participants were very happy. They went back with smiling faces. I hope after this activity and while returning home, you all will be as happy as those who attended the UCLG meeting summit. Dear organizers of Délice Network, I believe that it was a good idea to organize it here because Izmir is not only rich in traditional cuisine, traditional Mediterranean cuisine, but also it has another international leadership. It is chosen as pilot city for the new concept of Chita Slav city. It is very important, a new concept. This new concept is put by our mayor, Tunç Soyer, and it was accepted by the Chitaslav International Assembly. In the realization of Chitaslav Metropole, one of our most important instruments will be our traditional cuisine culture. So it's very important to organize it here. Let me give you a fun fact about cuisine and the olive tree. The word délice. In Italian, I think that as an Italian word, they pronounce it as delice. Delice means in Turkish wild olive tree. Wild olive tree. Because of this connotation, the name Network Délice always reminds us olive tree, olive oil, and Mediterranean called vegetable dishes. it's a nice composition, of course. Olive oil and the Mediterranean food. So, dear guests, and I have a recommendation to you, to you and the ones who are here and physically here, I mean. So please see not only natural beauties of Aegean Sea here, but also archaeological richness of this region. You must see. If you go a little bit south, you will see Ephesus. Don't go back without seeing Ephesus. And also, if you go a little bit north, you will face with Bergama. Bergama, both are the cultural heritage, World Cultural Heritage List. So, UNESCO Heritage List, of course. One word about Bergama. In Bergama, if you go into Bergama, it is almost 100 kilometers from here. If you visit Bergama, you will also go to Pergamon, ancient city. It's very important. And visiting this ancient city, you will experience different emotions. We feel it. This emotion, because there you will see an empty space. In Bergama, you will see an empty space, which is left from the temple of Zeus. The temple of Zeus was taken to Berlin 160 years ago. Keeping this information in mind, there you will hear the cry of a mother who missed her child. The mother is Pergamon, and the child is Zeus temple in Berlin. You understand what I mean? They are crying. So, dear participants, dear guests, with this short welcome speech, I wish you all a joyful stay and a successful meeting here. And I greet you with the hospitality of Izmir citizens. Thank you very much for coming Izmir and staying here. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Great hospitality indeed. And now a few words of introduction from the President of Délice Network, Olivier Marette. Thank you, Olivier.
So, dear Deputy Mayor, dear municipality members, dear Délice members, and wonderful staff, we finally made it. It has been such a long time since my last speech back in Stavanger in 2019. At that time, no one knew what was going to happen to us. But it is now the end of that long period without physical gatherings, without meetings. And during those 2 years, we've adapted to the new reality. We've been meeting online. We've been organizing monthly sessions like the monthly threads, etc. But we were missing something because the DNA of Délice meeting, which is sharing, connecting, learning, needs those physical gatherings. And without those physical gatherings, we just miss something in the life of the network. We don't feel connected with each other. So I'm really glad that this first meeting after this long period is happening in Izmir, because since they joined the network, since Izmir joined the network back in 2015, you've been very, very much involved in the network, and especially thanks to Sirma, who has been one of the most participating members of all the cities, to all the projects we've developed. And I'm really happy that we meet again, and I'm especially happy that this meeting is happening in Izmir. So I'll now leave the floor to Camille, who's going to explain you the program of this afternoon session.
Thank you. So, heritage on a plate. Not sure about you, but when I imagine this, I see a big bowl of spaghetti, all tangled up together. Maybe because it's so hard to conceptualize what food heritage really is. Is it our history? Is it our terroir? Is it our food specialities? Is it the way we eat? Within Délice Network, we have always considered food culture as an important aspect that cities should be working on. But we have never really spent time on thinking about what food culture really means. And this is the purpose of the discussions we will be having in the next few days. In Izmir, we will be introduced to the many different layers of the food culture, a bit like a dish of lasagna. The men and women we will be meeting here in the following days will help us answer this one question: how do we build the image of a food city from its food culture? On Thursday afternoon, our interactive workshop will allow us to talk about perceptions that we have on our own food heritage and of the other cities. And this afternoon, we will take a big dive into our topic, open our minds, and start thinking about that big bowl of spaghetti. Our different speakers will share their knowledge and experience to help us understand what lies under the concept of food heritage and how it can be a powerful tool for cities to work on. Our keynote speakers both have dedicated their daily work to food heritage, but using very different methods. They will each give their take on that bowl of spaghetti. And then after a lovely coffee break prepared by talented local pastry chefs, we will give the word to city representatives. Istanbul, Brussels, Cali, Stavanger, 4 cities with their own local products, iconic dishes, ways of eating, and history. The 4 experts of this round table will share the importance they give to this heritage within the projects that they develop in their city. We will keep this session interactive, of course. The guests following us online and all of you present here are more than welcome to share not only questions, but thoughts and ideas and projects you have worked on this topic. Camille Jourdan will be our chat manager, taking all the questions from the chat. So for those following us online, please be as active as you would be if you were here with us. So heritage on a plate, here we go. Our first guest today is a real food passionate. He has decided to focus his career on studying the way we eat. Maxime Michaud was born and raised in the outskirts of Lyon, where food is the main topic of conversation from morning to evening. And what better place to study the food cultures than the city known for being the world capital of gastronomy? With a PhD in anthropology, Maxime has joined the recognized Paul Bocuse Research Center and is now group leader on social science. Within his functions, Maxime runs various research projects on all social and cultural dynamics that surround a meal. Through his work, Maxime has had the opportunity to study food cultures all around the world, and this has inspired him to launch and lead a project called the International Observatory of Meals and Culinary Practices. This is a collaborative project of studies on food cultures. Maxime puts the same passion when discussing a meal in a fine dining restaurant or a sandwich during his lunch break. And not only does he study food and talk about food, he's also a master cook at home, and I've been told he makes the best kebabs of Lyon. Not tasted, though. So we are thrilled to have the prestigious Paul Bocuse Institute present here and associated with this meeting. Thank you, Maxime, for joining us to give us the first approach to what food heritage is and how it can be considered a barrier or lever in the evolution of eating practices. Thank you, Maxime. The floor is yours.
Thank you a lot, Camille. Sorting my smartphone because I have to control the time because I can speak all the afternoon about this topic. So first, I would like to thank the organizers, and especially Camille, which was my main contact, Camille with an S, both Camille, to invite me here. I'm very happy first to meet you from all these different cities, all these different places. And of course, I'm very happy to discover Izmir, and I'm really glad to all the persons from the city who are welcoming us so good, in a so good way since yesterday. So let's talk about food cultures and gastronomic heritages. The question I asked in this presentation was, is it a barriers or lever toward sustainable food systems or different food systems more generally? Just a small word about where I am from. I am a social anthropologist and a researcher. I'm working at the Institute Paul Bocuse, which is a high school in management of culinary arts, food service, and hospitality. Oh, it's me and not the presentation itself, sorry. But this culinary school has a specialty, which is to have created a research center, which is quite rare in France to have a private research center. So our private research center, existing since a little bit more than 10 years now, take the challenge to study and to make tasty, healthy, and sustainable diets accessible to anyone and in all the contexts. We are a not-profit organization working with a small team, about 15 researchers and engineers and chefs. So, to be clear, what are we talking about more clearly? Because if you look at the presentation of today just behind me, you will see that two words are used in the title and in the presentation: heritage and food culture. But what does it mean really? Why are we sometimes speaking about heritage, sometimes of tradition, sometimes of food culture or culture? So just a few back. Tradition is a belief or a behavior which is still active in the present, used nowadays, but perceived as being rooted, as being old, rooted in the past. And it is transmitted, it is something very important, it is something transmitted from generation to generation. The use of tradition in a social group is to bring legitimacy to some practices. Some practices are legitimated because they are considered as traditional. And we don't have to ask ourselves every day, every time we make it or we think it, if it's useful or not, if it's a good way to do or not. We just do it because it's tradition, and often it's enough, it's all we have to know. But what is the difference with heritage, which can be quite complicated sometimes? So heritage is something selected. There is an operation, there is something volunteer. Tradition, we just inherit it and we say it's tradition. But heritage is selected and in a certain society, and we think it is especially important and symbolic of the legacy of the past generations. Heritage is not only something about tradition, it can be cultural, it can be natural. We have natural heritages, so some kind of natural space common that we think we need to protect for all the humankind. And it can be material or immaterial as a cultural heritage. You have some buildings which are heritage, you have some dishes which are considered as heritage. It can be specific to one society, to one country, to one geographical region, or to all the mankind. So there is many different type of groups and size. And more especially, so heritage is more institutionalized. That's something that has to be recognized in a way, in a more formal way. And it is oriented toward protection. When we speak about something as a heritage, it is generally because we feel that it needs to be protected. And generally, it's when it is threatened, when we think it can disappear, that it becomes an heritage. And it is dedicated toward the exterior of the society. That's something also we want to show, to promote what we are, or to have some recognition of what we are as a people. Or in the contrary of tradition, which is something that it's not especially supposed to be promoted or created especially to be promoted. It is generally promoted, but you don't need to promote it to make it exist. So some traditions can be heritage. Of course, we are taking some traditions and transforming it into heritage. But all traditions are not heritage. Well, we know that it is not the case. It is something we just felt. But this culture, even the hunter-gatherers in Kalahari Desert, many things, they have a lot evolved and changed over the years. And what we see is just one state of this culture at what moments. So now, what about food? Let's get back to what we are supposed to reflect on today. Just a few words about what are the social dimensions of food, because it is something that is sometimes forgotten in the discussions about food. Food is not only something you eat, and it's not only the food in itself, and it's not only nutrition. It's sociologist Jean-Pierre Poulain, the eatable class, which is what is edible is what you can eat without dying from it. The eatable is what you choose to consider as acceptable to eat. And it's very smaller. There is a lot of things which are edible, which you don't eat actually. It is related to norms and representation. If I give you a plate with insects, I don't know if you will be very happy to eat it. But insects are part of the diets of about 2/3 of the population in the world. And if I show you other more French dishes like snails, frogs, or some very strange and smelly cheese, maybe you will be reluctant to eat it, while we are, actually I really like this, and I will be happy to eat it. So we are choosing in all that we can eat some things that we accept to eat and some other things. It is very linked. I will not go deep into that. deep into that, but of the principle of incorporation. Because when you eat something, you are incorporating all the values and symbolic representations you are linked to this food. So some food, you are choosing to eat it because you have positive representation about it. And you can have some taboos, some food that you cannot eat because you have some negative representation about it, or it is considered as not sane, not pure enough to be eaten. I will go to the food system because just very quickly, the way you are perceiving the food arrived in your plate will also play a role in the acceptation of this plate. And this is also something cultural. Culinary practices are something very interesting because, of course, it's technical actions. We saw it just a few hours ago when we saw how the sole fish was cooked here. But it's also something symbolic. When you cook something, you are taking something from the nature and transforming it into food. And food is something cultural. You are taking something which is not supposed to be eaten and transforming it to make it eatable. It can be only rinsing sometimes or cutting. It's just the only thing you need to know. But you need to do. But it's still an operation and a symbolic operation, making it acceptable. Consumer habits also are varying a lot, of course. And all of you who had the opportunity to travel were facing it. It's not only what you eat, but it's also where you eat, for example. We have dedicated places where we eat. Even in our own homes, we have places, sometimes a kitchen, sometimes dining places, where we are eating, and others where we don't, in our rooms or in our bathrooms and many things. There are many places where we don't eat, and it's human to choose places. And this can vary also regarding culture. There is a placing, but the way we are eating, what we are using to eat, forks or chopsticks or many things, what we are doing while we are eating, are we allowed to speak? What can we speak about while we are eating? Who is supposed to speak first? And many different things. This is also some cultural and social dimensions around food. Food temporality, of course, regarding your age, your position in the circle of life. Regarding seasonality, here there are some examples. The barbecue in France is only during the summer. I know that in some Nordic countries, you can eat barbecue all the time because it is something very used. But during the winter, we are having some cheesy meal like raclette or fondue, which is something very strong, and we only have it in the winter. It is very strange to have it during the summer. And of course, the daily rhythm. When you're traveling, you never know when you are supposed to eat, at what time precisely, what is the use in this country. And last thing, but not the less important, is commensality and social differentiation. Eating with someone is something very important. When you eat with someone, you are creating a specific relationship with this person. It's also why it is sometimes very uncomfortable to eat with someone you don't know, or someone you don't like, or things like that. And also it's why it is a nightmare to make table plans when you have a wedding or something like that. So eating with someone is the best way to create relationships. And it says a lot about your relations. Here in the picture, for example, you have the former President Obama and the former President Hollande of France dining together. And what is interesting in this picture is that because you have this table between both, you know that there are good diplomatic relationships between them. If you remove this table, the symbol of the picture is absolutely not the same. And there is no food on it. Only the way it is dressed is enough, it is prepared, is enough to say that it's supposed to be a good meal, and so good relationships. So what I wanted to stress with this aspect is that social and cultural dimensions of food are not only about what we eat, but it's also a lot, and sometimes mainly about how we eat. And food culture encompasses all the current food practices shared in a social group, and not only tradition and heritage. So food culture is more than tradition and heritage. It is tradition and heritage, plus all that we are doing every day, even if it doesn't look traditional or local, but it's also part of our culture, the way we are eating every day. We cannot say it's not culture. Everything is culture, in a way. I will speak about it a little bit after. Just a word about food tradition and heritage. It often happens when, as I said, it is threatened. We think something is supposed to disappear, and then we are creating traditions and heritage. We are taking things that are usual and saying it is a tradition. It is what happened, for example, in France, when after the French Revolution, they replaced the former province to turn it into département. So the division of the country changed. And there are some intellectuals who decided, because they were afraid to lose the identity, local identity of their province, they decided to collect some local specialty and to valorize it as traditions. And that's where they collected some dishes, some dances, some speeches, languages, and that's when appears what we call the terroir dishes, or the local traditional dishes in France that you can find everywhere while traveling in the country. Before, it was just local way of cooking or local dishes, but people were not saying it is local tradition. It appears at this moment because it was supposed to be threatened, and it appears this way. But here is about the cultural heritage, also about food. There is a lot, and there is even more. I have to update my table because there are new ones like the couscous or other things which has been added as food heritage. The first one was the gastronomic meal of the French, but there are many others nowadays. Just a few words because time is running about food cultures and international dynamics. Here it is a part of a movie. Maybe you saw it. Just go and see it if you want afterwards. The movie Pulp Fiction, where the two characters are discussing together, and one is speaking about his travel in Europe. And when he's speaking about what strikes him, what were the most cultural differences, he's speaking about his visit to McDonald's restaurants in Europe. He's saying the way it is different from McDonald's in the US, because you can have some mayonnaise with the French fries, because you can have some beer sometimes inside, because the name of the burgers are changing, and it is what strikes him the most. So I really like this part of the movie, because you can say that even McDonald's, which is maybe the symbol of globalization and often attacked for that, in a way, McDonald's in the different countries is not the same, because always cultures are transforming international influences locally and changing it. McDonald's, when they arrived in France, it was a problem for them because everyone was coming to it at the same time during a few hours, you know. In the US, you can come and eat every day, all the day. It was not the case, so they have to change all the way they were acting for that. So what I say, the dissemination of products or concepts does not necessarily imply the standardization of the practices. And novelties always appears with hybridization, syncretism, crossbreeding, all the things. And even what is now a local tradition was at one point an hybridization. At some point, when you go back in history, nowadays traditions were new things at one moment, and often influence from cultural contacts. Yeah, I have maybe no time, but here it's the PhD thesis of one of my further PhD students. She worked on the food practices of Brazilian immigrants in France and French immigrants in Brazil. And one of her focus was of Brazilian immigrants in Lyon, women who decided to cook Brazilian dishes for other Brazilian immigrants. So they created some informal shops, we can say, and some of them want to become formal, so they need to sell more and to sell also to French people. So they changed a little bit the recipe and the way they presented it to adapt to local culture. And that's one of the examples She said, I have to do a mix to please them all. So here's an example of hybridization, the pão de queijo, which is supposed to be big and eaten generally at breakfast. She make it smaller because it was considered too big for French people, smaller, and sold it as being eaten for aperitif for French people. And it worked like that. So she changed it a little bit and made an hybridization, something new, which is still Brazilian, but a little bit French. And that's something we always said, and what I was saying before is that food cultures are also evolving like every cultures, thanks to foreign influences. But they are still shaping the way these influences are integrated. So, just a word about food culture and sustainable food system. Are there a barrier? I take the example of meat in France, because I often have the question. You say, we all agree, and all scientists agree that we need to reduce meat consumption globally because of its impact on the climate and the climate change. So is the central place of meat in French dishes a barrier toward more sustainable food? Do we have to put tradition away to become more sustainable? That's the question. And there is a piece that we are exploring at the research center, is that it is more complex because, for example, the notion of terroir and local product that we have in France can be a way also to reduce meat consumption. Because if you reduce meat but have better quality, and you have meat which is produced in a way it has less impact on agriculture, you can still eat meat. But you can reduce the place, make it maybe not in the center or having less meat. And having less meat can be done also by using all this label and terroir products and geographical indication we have in France, but it exists also in other countries. We know we have Kobe, for example, in the Délice Network for that. So that could be a way also to go further, using local cultural resources to go to a more sustainable food system. It doesn't have to be one or the other, tradition or sustainable food. It can be both. So the conclusions, because now it's time, is that first, food cultures consist in traditions, heritages, and contemporary food practices. What you are doing today, what you are eating today, is also part of your food culture, if you want it or not. For example, McDonald's restaurants are the first restaurant chain in France nowadays, from what I said. So, in a way, we want it or not, but McDonald's is no part of French food culture. It's not part of French tradition, of course, but it's part of everyday food culture. We just need to know if we want to promote it or not. That's just the question. Food cultures are evolving and transforming. And the transformation is not always a loss of tradition, because it's with transformation that we'll have new tradition for the next generation too. So you need to accept that things are changing and transforming. And then regarding sustainability, to finish with that, there are often local resources to make local food cultures more sustainable without destroying it. And here, I just leave the slide because it is what Camille told about, the Observatory of Food Culture and Sustainability, a project we are trying to launch at the research center that I'm leading. And I'm pretty sure that the Délice Network can be a help into this project, either as a technical support, if some cities can help us to diffuse some questionnaires, or maybe to help us arriving and making some field work can be a help, or maybe some cities can have some contacts that can be financial support for us. And we will have opportunity to discuss that afterward. Do not hesitate to come to me if you want more information. Thank you very much. I hope I gave the time. Yes, it's okay.
Thank you very much, Maxime. Very enlightening presentation with good definitions. So we'll open the Q&A session for a few minutes for Maxime. Any questions from the audience or from the chat, Camille? Is there anything you would like to ask?
Perhaps one question from the chat will be a more concrete example about the difference between tradition and heritage related to food. Perhaps Will you give us some example related to Mediterranean food? Or do you have some example?
So related to Mediterranean food is a little bit complex because, Mediterranean diet has been recognized as a cultural heritage for all the mankind. So maybe all Mediterranean food traditions now can be considered as heritage. So that's one of the reasons there are some differences. But I think we all have at home experience or local tradition which are not really considered as heritage because it doesn't had been promoted like that. For example, I am from the Beaujolais, so a region very close to Lyon, and producing wine, not as good as Bordeaux wine, of course, but good wine still. And we have some local traditions, which is to when we are after the harvest, we have some leftovers of the grapes, and we are using it to cook some sausages and very special dishes. This dish is a tradition, in a way. That's something very traditional we are doing. But we cannot say it's a heritage, because it's not something that we are valorizing outside as an image of what we are, or something very strong. Maybe one day we will decide that this special dish will be, but it's not the case for the moment. It's tradition, but not heritage, because we don't feel it like that.
Thank you very much for your presentation. What do you think about the geographical indication system for saving food heritage or make sustainable this system?
I think I'm pretty convinced that it can be a good way to go toward that. That's also why we are working on that at the research center. I have one student now, a PhD student, Rafael Villota. He's working on geographical indications in Ecuador, especially on chocolate, cacao, cocoa, and coffee in the Galapagos Islands. And what is interesting is that geographical indications, if it's well done, it can be a way to promote quality and good practices and local practices against quantity and bad environmental practices, for example. But if it's well done, because the problem is that sometimes geographical indications became a way to make the prices higher without having all the quality behind that, which is supposed to justify this higher price. So it needs a lot of regulation. And what is interesting too is that this idea that a product, this idea of terroir, that a product can be better or different regarding the place it is produced, the way it is produced, and the weather, it's something which does not exist in every country. It was very French and Italian in a way, or Latin culture. But now it makes sense in many different countries. It's something which is, the gaze on that is changing. That's what we saw in Ecuador, for example. Before it was, producers didn't really understood what it was about. Why do they have a label? But now it is changing, and there are many different things that are appearing and new labels which are interesting.
Maxime? Yes, I have another question from the chat, live from Aarhus. Jesper would like to know how can we work to ensure sustainability in local foods?
Sorry?
How can we work to ensure sustainability in local foods?
I didn't get the verb.
How can we work to ensure sustainability?
Work to ensure? Okay, sorry.
Sustainability in local food.
It is very difficult because it is the question of ensuring sustainability of food in itself, which is a problem. What do you count? Of course, now we are really focusing on carbon, how carbon, the lower. But it's not the only thing. Sometimes you can have something very low in carbon production, but very bad for the environment anyway. So there are many different ways. And sometimes producing local can be less sustainable than making it transport from elsewhere, because it's consuming too much resources at one place. And if you make it come from places where there are a lot of resources, it can cover the costs, the environmental cost of the transportation. So it's always very complicated. So having local is not only, it's often more sustainable, but it's not only about sustainability. It's also about the kind of relationship we want to have with our food. And sometimes we can accept that, for example, the goats, which are coming from New Zealand in France, are supposed, for some researchers, to be more sustainable than the one we are producing in France. But does it justify that? And we also have some local products to value, not only in in terms of sustainability. So that's something very complex, and that's a reflection that is not only about sustainability, but also about the relation we want to have with our food. And I'm pretty sure that the labels, as we said, can be a way for the consumers also to ensure that what he is eating can be interesting for the environment.
So you spoke at the point of McDonald's in France, and you said that well, it's food culture, it's not tradition. But will there ever come a point in the future where it will be a tradition?
Maybe it can. It's very you cannot unless you're traveling in time, but I'm not sure anyone can do that now. But you cannot know what will become a tradition and what won't. But anyway, you still can. It's not because culture are changing, evolving, and I say you need to accept the evolution of culture, that you need to accept everything. Still, you have to reflect of what you want for the future of your food. So that's not because McDonald's is now part of French food culture that we can say it's a good thing. You know, maybe we can reflect and say, what do we eat in this place? Is it what we want to eat and what we want our children to eat? And that's still something we can act on and we can write. So we have choices. We can choose what we want for the future of our food cultures. But still now it's part. But maybe it will become a tradition in a few years. I must admit I'm not sure about that. But
thank you, Maxime. Have you ever worked on a methodology to map what the food heritage of a place is, using all the different items you presented in the first parts of your introduction? So the different, the food, the component, the way we eat. Have you ever done that work on a specific place?
No, that's really something. That was what we had in mind behind this idea of an observatory. That was to go deeper in this mapping, and not only mapping food or recipes, but mapping the way we are eating and having something larger. So for this moment, we worked only on some specific places at one point and one aspect. So I spoke about Mary's PhD, which work on food practices of immigrants, French immigrants and Brazilian immigrants. And the aim of this comparison was to try to raise what is food cultures, Brazilian food cultures and French food cultures in this contact. What can we see in this contact in France between Brazilian food culture and French one, and in Brazil? And what can we say about it? That was a way to look at it, actually, to have this special situation. I have also one PhD student. She's studying the way families are eating together in Lyon nowadays, very deeply. She's looking at what is happening, what are they talking about, how it is happening, what are the behavior of the parents, of the children, what is important for them, what are the special also meals, the special moments. Sometimes they are having just a pizza in front of the TV instead of having the formal meal. So how it is important to have some changing. So that's some very deep studies that can help us to better understand all these aspects. But what we want to do with the observatory is actually to go deeper and have many different examples of that.
So you can study a society by the way they eat, for example. Can you say that?
Generally, what we said to the students in anthropology when they are arriving in a new society, in a new culture, in a new social group, even sometimes in their own city, that's to say the best way to see who is who, what are the relationships, is to share a meal with them. So first start with go and eat with them, and all the relationships, the hierarchy, and some norms and representations of the society will appear in one time. So I think the way we are eating, that's what we call the total social fact in sociology and anthropology. That eating is, when you are eating, you are mobilizing all your cultural background. And the best way to understand a society is first to eat in this society with the people and to respect also the way they eat, to feel it in also in yourself. So maybe having raki and meze is the best way to understand local culture here at first. So I'm glad that I started with that yesterday, just after arriving in the plane, being brought to a meal was absolutely perfect for me.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Camille and other participants.
Thank you very much, Maxime. This was very enlightening. So our second speaker represents, on her own, all that we intended to cover with this topic. Pati Jinich was born and raised Mexican, now living in the USA. She's a former political analyst focused on US-Mexico relations. But one day, she decided to switch her policy papers for cooking pots and decided to dedicate her work to promoting her homeland, Mexico, through its food. Her TV show, called Pati's Mexican Table, has received 3 James Beard Awards, which is a bit like the Oscars for the food industry, but also 4 nominations to the Emmys. She was named one of the 100 greatest cooks of all time, and Pati is also the resident chef for the Mexican Cultural Institute, and she has been honored to cook for President Obama. Pretty nice. Pati's third cookbook, called Treasures of the Mexican Table, Classic Recipes, Local Secrets, aims to shed light on some of Mexico's lesser-known regional dishes. And it is out today. Unfortunately, this change of date has forced Pati to cancel her trip to meet us here in Izmir. But we are still very much honored by her virtual presence on this very special day for her. Last October, Pati released a special of her TV show called La Frontera, highlighting the fascinating yet very misunderstood US-Mexico border region, where countries and cultures come together to create a sense of place of its own. Using food care heritage to create a place in such strategic areas, that's very fascinating. So it's live from her very iconic kitchen that Pati will be sharing her story and her work on food heritage. But before we meet with Pati, let's start by having a look at the trailer of La Frontera for you to have a better eye on Pati's work. Here's the trailer.
The idea of the border has profound meaning to me. As a Mexican American, I always feel like I'm treading between 2 worlds.
That's Texas. That's Mexico.
I was born and raised in Mexico, then moved to the US where I raised my family, and I've spent my career traveling my homeland, sharing Mexican food and culture with the world.
Are you with me? I want to tell you things.
Now, I'm setting my sights directly on the place where my 2 beloved countries meet.
Little did they know that they came in to get the burrito and I'm gonna be making it for them, but what they don't know is I'm learning how to make them. I'm gonna taste. It's phenomenal, and it's so packed with so much flavor.
Welcome to South Texas. We're just starting.
Yeah, take me there, take me there.
Some people say Tex-Mex as though it's not a good thing. To us, it's everything. It's a culture in of itself. The food, the community, this is where Texas and Mexico come together for generations, if not centuries.
In this two-part special, I'm traveling the Texas-Mexico border from far west Texas to the Gulf of Mexico, breaking myths and misconceptions about the communities that live and thrive here.
¿Por qué querías abrir en Estados Unidos?
Porque siempre he buscado el sueño americano y que tuviera éxito en Estados Unidos. Abrimos el primero y fue un éxito tremendo desde el primer día.
And yet, the story at the border has always been a complicated one.
This country is always a bit fickle. You know, at times it loves you and it welcomes you and it wants to bring you in. And other times it's going to criminalize you.
Does it annoy you that the border gets such bad press?
It comes to a point where you say, hey, this is where I am from. I think that this sense of being from one region, that it's unique, and that's starting to see the benefits, not of what city has or the other, but what we have together.
But for all the complexities of La Frontera, these communities feel alive and connected in a way that I have not experienced in all my years of travel.
We have so much culture, so much history. So, you know, a lot of the murals, those are the stories of our people.
And it's a great place where two countries and two cultures kind of converge and join together, and they form this special little place we call La Frontera.
Join me as I explore the border and all it has to offer, celebrating the richness, diversity, and possibilities that can't exist anywhere else. They say the grass is greener on the other side, but what happens when you're right on the fence? I'm Pati Jinich, and this is La Frontera.
Apologies. And special apologies to Pati, who was dreading this. Pati, are you with us?
I am here. Can you see me?
This was the topic of conversation. Will the video work? And Pati was extremely stressed about it, and we said, don't worry, it will work. But Pati's experienced, and there were troubles. But we will, of course, send you the link, and I encourage you to watch not only the trailer, but the whole show. Pati, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. It's very early in Washington, so thank you, Pati.
Thank you so much, Camille. Thank you so much, everybody at the Délice Network. It is such a pleasure to be connecting with you today from my kitchen, my very Mexican love. Food takes you back to your fondest and dearest memories. From the rest. And connecting with my personal experience, as Camille had wanted me to describe how I got to where I am, promoting the food and the cuisine and the culture of my home country. I am Mexican, former. And it was by way of the kitchen, as I was so nostalgic for my home country and the food that had nurtured me, and meeting so many myths and preconceptions about us Mexicans, what we look like, what we eat like, what our culture is like, that I realized that it was by way of the kitchen that I could build bridges and explain who we are, not only in Mexico, but to others. Because I have the empathy, the common experience of treading between worlds and experience a place through food. Now I have a dozen years of experience with a TV series that has showcased Mexico, one region at a time, opening a window into each region, and through the lens of food, its people, ingredients, techniques, legends, and stories and culture. I started sharing the Mexico that I missed, that I knew, the regions that I really knew by heart. And then I started taking my audience to the places in Mexico that I didn't know. I became a trusted translator, interpreter of my home country into a new one. And as the years have gone by, this audience and these friends and this community that loves food and culture have followed me to new places, like the special that Camille just showed of the border where the US and Mexico meet. And now they're eager to explore as I go to other places, being an immigrant in the US, connecting with other foods and cultures. People want to go where you will take them if you are excited about sharing what it is in food and culture that excites you and that really enriches your table and your culture. And in the way that I approach food, I have some examples to share. I will not ask Camille to share another video which we had prepared because I think it may pause, but we will share the link. But in the series and in my books and in the talks that I give, and however we promote food in digital spaces too, with the cities and the countries that I work with, the approach is to showcase food, using it as the most noble of tools to open a window into who people are and what the place is. So to give you an example, we don't go to a restaurant and sit down and eat the food, but we go behind all of that. The audience these days is so jaded. Nobody wants to be caught in a tourist trap, whether on TV on a screen or in person. People want the real, the genuine. So to give you an example, in one of the episodes in my show, Patty's Mexican Table, I make a delicious oyster soup here in my kitchen. This is actually my set. It's not a set, it's my real kitchen. I'm so sorry you had to hear my dog bark a little while ago. But I make an oyster soup and I explain to people how to make the oyster soup, and it has a seasoning of chipotle sin adobo, which is a beloved Mexican condiment. And then I tell people they can make the soup wherever they are, in whichever kitchen, as long as they find the ingredients, which are not complicated to find. And then I take them to a field piece, to a place in Altata, Sinaloa. Now, most people have heard from Sinaloa really bad things. That's where El Chapo comes from. That's where Narcos was filmed. But people don't know that in Sinaloa, there is an incredible fertile land full of hardworking, family-oriented people. Just as some things are grown that aren't great for the world, they are the basket case of most of what is produced and eaten in Mexico. So we go with the oyster farmers and learn about how they're growing those oysters and why they are so incredibly delicious. They're the size of my hand. And it turns out that where they're growing those oysters, in the salted water from the Sea of Cortez, it is the water that comes from way out in the Sierra Mountains that goes through the mining towns with very mineral-rich soil, and then the fertile land that the sweet water encounters the salty water, all filled with minerals and nutrients, and all these help the oysters be the size and you have the unique taste and characteristics that they do. And we connect with the fishermen that grow them, and we connect with the people that help distribute them, and we get to know all that it takes for those oysters to exist. And just another example that I wanted to share, and taking into consideration again that the audience, the people who you want to bring to your city, people are jaded with so much content. They don't want planned. They want real and raw, even if, of course, things behind the scenes have to be planned. If people are going to come visit you in your city, you need to plan what you're going to show. You need to plan what you're going to share. But people want to feel that they're going behind the scenes, which is where we should take them, so they can get to the heart of who we are. They want to go to the roots of things. So an example is I went to Jalisco, to Guadalajara, and that is a link that we can share with you all via email. I went to Jalisco, Guadalajara to eat the tortas ahogadas. Now the torta ahogada, which translates to drowned crusty sandwich, it is a classic dish that defines that city. It is a bread that was that came to be from a French bread maker called Birot. And this bread in Mexico is called virote. So not many people know that Mexican cuisine has a lot of influence from a lot of different cultures. So this bread, which is called the virote, is crusty, it's salty, and it's made to withhold a lot of sauce, because in Mexico we like to sauce and dress things. And this is a street food, kind of a food, a street stand food. So this bread is topped with luscious carnitas, which is meat that it's cooked until it's caramelized and falling apart. And then that crunchy, crusty sandwich stuffed with that caramelized, luscious meat is dunked into a tomato sauce that's seasoned, and then it's dressed with another salsa. It's doubly dipped with a spicy chile de árbol salsa. And that is a crazy experience when you go to the corners that sell these tortas and you're eating that soaked torta and the juices are dripping down your arms and you're biting into that crunchy, incredible sandwich. No wonder it is one of the most popular things in the entire country of Mexico. So I went to the most famous street food stand in Guadalajara to eat the torta, to share with my audience and my viewers a classic that has withstood the test of time, that has been passed through generations, that is an heirloom that everybody in that city is proud about. And the magical thing about food is that as I was eating that torta ahogada, and there were lines of people there, loyal people eating the tortas ahogadas, the owner and one of the people there buying, the client, asked for a new thing. And the new dish is called the destrozado, which is very funny. It translates to the destroyed. And it is a crispy, crunchy quesadilla, which is like an empanada. And it's broken into pieces, served on a plate. And this quesadilla or empanada is fried and crisp and crunchy and stuffed with mashed potatoes and cheese. It's broken into pieces, and then it's topped with that caramelized, luscious meat that went into the torta ahogada, but now it's topped into this mess of a crunchy quesadilla plate. And then it's sauced with the tomato sauce and the chile de árbol salsa, and some pickled cabbage or slaw salad, and some pico de gallo on top. It is so messy, you have to eat it with a spoon. But it is one of the most incredibly delicious things I have ever eaten. And it's a new thing from my home country that I never even had heard about. As I went to try that old classic, the torta ahogada, and I wanted to share that with my audience, I got to know a new classic being born. And it is so incredible when you see that your food, your people, your cuisine have the space to not only honor what we've inherited, and we have the responsibility to continue to pass it on. It's in our culinary, cultural DNA. But we also have to leave the room for innovation so that our cuisine and our culture can have the space to innovate. And it is in this tension between preserving and innovating that we can lure people to come and get to know what we are made of. Now, I've been talking about all these things, and I don't know if you guys have been able to hear me well. Camille, is everything okay?
Sorry, yes. We are here. We are here and focused. Thank you so much, Pati. Maybe a
Thank
first.
you, Camille. Oh, and I wanted to say I apologize because you may hear my dog barking in the background.
Your dog wants his breakfast, I think. I think you should feed the dog.
I am so sorry. But before we go to any questions that you all may have, is that one of the questions, Camille, that you had asked me is, in my experience of promoting food and culture in all these years, and I've been so lucky to work with people like Felipe from VC Tucson, who is so proud about the food of his city and his culture. I've found that not only do we have to find the classics that we love and we want to continue passing on, but we have to find those who are doing their part in continuing to produce, create, and share those things that are elemental to the identity of your heritage. Sometimes these people are forgotten or taken for granted, and it's part of our heritage. So that it doesn't die down, we have to protect and promote these people that are keeping alive these threads, while at the same time, we have to create the space for people to not feel tired and be able to create. So it is that tension that a city and a place, I think, has to find the balance in, protecting and making the people that continue to pass on our treasures and our classics, make them feel proud and valued and really respected, while also allowing for new room to breathe and to create. And with this, I think we can go to any questions and answers questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Pati, for being with us. Again, it's 6 in the morning in Washington. I think Pati was fresher than ever, so thank you very much. We will take questions first from the chat. Do we have any question from the chat, Camille?
Yes, we have Camille. We have a question from Felipe Garcia.
Felipe, who was
well
mentioned. Hello,
USA.
Felipe from Tucson.
So, Pati, you mentioned that heritage foods are not only old recipes or dishes, but also new dishes. So what new dishes have you encountered in your trips that you think are part of the heritage of those communities?
This is such a great question. And one of the examples was this destrozado that I was talking about in Guadalajara. But the incredible thing is that everywhere I go, I get so humbled because I go to places returning and wanting to share the things that I've learned, from growing up and that I love and have nurtured me. And then I find all these new places. And one of these examples was actually in Tucson. I was in Tucson and I was trying all the incredible Mexican food that exists there. And I met with Maria at Boca Tacos, which actually Felipe was there and he helped introduce me to Maria. And I saw how Maria is taking her vision of Mexican food while respecting, the way that we make tacos. The corn tortillas have to be fluffy and delicious and well made, and the fillings have to be able to stand within their own right. She's playing with salsas like I had never seen before. Sometimes having the distance gives you the freedom. She's made salsas with bananas. She's made salsas with ingredients from other cultures and other countries. So I think, in my experience, it is not only the sharing of the things that I think I'm going to find, but being able to be unscripted and share the wonders that you encounter as you move on. And I think that word of unscripted, which is used a lot on TV, scripted is when you have a plan. And unscripted is when you just experience as you go and you show people what is happening right there on the spot. And I think that is something that can be applied to how a city decides to share who it is with the world, because that is how the audience wants to experience a place. Even if we plan the activities, even if we plan, of course, there has to be planned behind the scenes, as in a production, as in a TV show. But it is that capacity to be open to not only share and eat the things we love, but to be open to let others play and to always be open to know that we just don't know enough, even about our own home countries and our own places. Camille, if there's anything that I've been incredibly humbled about is I started in culture with a master's degree and a political science degree, and I thought I knew my country and I had eaten my food throughout. And the more the years go by, the more I go back into Mexico and the regions that I knew and that I didn't know, the more I realize how little we know. So having that marvel, that openness, that capacity to become awed by our own treasures, I think it becomes contagious. When we don't take for granted where we come from and our richness, our treasures, it is when we can share them with the world.
Thank you very much. I have a question on my own. I like your idea of distance gives some freedom to create, and you're also apart from your country. You're not in Mexico anymore. So what could be an interesting thought for the people here is to see how they can rely on also people who are abroad to better have a look at what's happening in their own city and those talents. Because when you're hands-on, it's so hard to it's what I say often, to do the helicopter, to kind of see things with another perspective. So taking ambassadors that are far away or looking at your own citizens that have moved away can allow to enhance that aspect. Are there any more questions? Yes.
Camille, with what you just said, and I'm just hearing an echo when I talk, so I'm reducing the volume. But let me just say that I think that what you just said is so crucial and vital, because it was only when I moved to the US that I was so nostalgic and hungry for my home country food and cuisine and culture that I had the eyes of a foreigner. I couldn't go back to Mexico because my papers were getting settled so that I could work from here. And it was only having that distance and that nostalgia that led me to not take for granted everything that I had growing up with. And then the incredible thing, Camille, was that as I started connecting with other Mexicans in the US who were not from Mexico City like me, I started learning the different accents in grocery stores. You know, I would run into other Mexicans that would buy Mexican ingredients. And people have to know that I wasn't a good cook. I was a horrible cook. I was an academic. So I started asking people in grocery stores who I heard speaking Spanish, what are you going to use that for? And how do you make your rice? And how do you make your beans? Of course, then I decided to resign and enroll in cooking school. But I learned that there were so many ways of making foods. There are so many accents. And I started realizing how little I knew of my own home country. And we have to hone in on the power of that. Connect with the people from your city or from your country that are in other places or that can act as connectors. So I have, by being away from Mexico, I have become a really powerful translator and interpreter. Powerful not in terms of political power, but in terms of trust, because people trust what I share, because they know that I have the authenticity because I'm an immigrant here. And so I connect with other immigrants from other countries, and you have to find the people that have that passion to share with others where they are and where they come from.
Thank you so much. I think we had a question from Olivier from Brussels.
Yes, good morning. As you probably know, as Europeans, the most we know about authentic Mexican cuisine that you are defending and that you are promoting in the States is not Mexican cuisine, it is Tex-Mex cuisine, which is not really the same thing. So my question is double, how do you feel about that? And the second question is, you think that the Mexican authorities should use that real authentic Mexican food as a promotional tool?
Yes, and these are great questions. And I think that not only Mexican authorities and politicians and, you know, Mexicans overall, but I think people all over the world, in all the wonderful cities that you all come from, should use food as a way, as a genuine, authentic, heartfelt, deep way to connect and get to know one another. I agree with you that most of what people around the world know as Mexican food is Tex-Mex food, or, you know, a very casual, fast Mexican food. But I am one who tends to see the glass not halfway empty or halfway full, but overflowing. So I see the fact that everybody already knows that there's something called Mexican, even if it's a taco that I don't find that incredibly delicious. But that is one little door to get in. So, for example, many Mexicans that I know get very upset that here in the US, people celebrate Cinco de Mayo in an unauthentic way, that people use it to drink a lot or to celebrate with stereotypes, which was one of the questions and topics that Camille and I had talked. How do you feel about the stereotypes from your city or from your country? You know, for Mexicans, it's that donkey piñata, that huge sombrero, that gigantic jalapeño. And people get upset with why are they celebrating Cinco de Mayo, which is a huge celebration here in the US, much more than Mexico, or Day of the Dead, which is starting to become popular. And my answer is hop on that train and ride it and use it to your advantage to share more. So if people already want to celebrate Cinco de Mayo, instead of being upset about how they're celebrating it with not great food or Tex-Mex food, say, hey, you want to celebrate Cinco de Mayo? You already know those hard-shell tacos from Taco Bell? Here's some other tacos for you. Here's some other margaritas. Here's some other drinks. You've learned about tequila because people do a lot of shots with tequila, and people tend to get a lot of, drunk with tequila. Instead of saying, oh, that's terrible, say, wait, you already know tequila? Let me show you the different kinds of tequila. Let me show you tequila that is so good that you want to sip it as if it was the finest of whiskey or cognac, because it is. So I think that not only for Mexican food and culture, I really find that now people will want to go with me wherever I'm trying and experiencing things, because I'm getting to that heart of sharing the authentic and the true, unjaded piece of that place. And I think that everybody in every city should really use food as a tool, because just as I was saying in the beginning, just like art or poetry, food has the power to let you connect without prejudices. So if there's stereotypes from your city that you think exist all over the world, you can use those as a door to unlock and say, this is what you know, but come and let me show you what else is there and what is behind that. And I think Mexico, of course, should do much more with food and culture than it does. You can see the example of Peru and what Gaston Acurio did there. Anyway, I know I'm taking probably, Camille, too much time. I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. It's a pleasure to hear you. Any other comments or questions about Pati's work this morning? I had one question about your viewers. Do you feel like the people watching Pati's Mexican Table are more Mexicans that are nostalgic, or Americans that are wanting for some, travel and exotic views on Mexico? Or do you have a bit of both?
Great question. And I think that it is a combination. Hold on. Let me open the door so you don't hear my dog bark. Mila, come on.
The beauty of modern worlds.
I was going to, yes, I know that I truly invited you into my home. So now you can see my dog barking. A little bit later, you can see my kids coming down for breakfast. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I told them to stay away. What I was going to say was that I would say my viewers are really balanced between the two. It is probably like 60% is mainstream, and now the show can be watched worldwide through Amazon Prime and other networks. But I would say here in the US, it's like 60% mainstream, or, more American, 65%. And the rest are people that have some kind of connection not only with Mexico or Latin America and want to stay connected to those roots or want to relearn more about where they come from. So I would say it's really a combination.
Good. Well, I think it is an amazing show to promote Mexico, and I highly encourage you all to have a look and to see if you have this kind of ambassador in your destinations, because it's such a powerful promotional tool, especially when they're well done with amazing hosts such as Pati. Any other questions, items? Maybe anyone from Izmir has a comment on Pati's work and how it can connect to the work that is done here in Izmir? Sirma, any thoughts? Okay, Sirma says thank you. Sirma is the food lady of Izmir. Well, thank you so much, Pati. It was a great honor to be with you this morning. Again, we will send all the videos to everyone. We have with us today, let us give you a little round of who is here. I have in front of me the former Minister for Tourism and Culture of Turkey, who is now Deputy Mayor of the city of Izmir. We have representatives from Helsinki in Finland, from Riga, from Lyon in France, from Brussels, from Cali, Colombia, from Bordeaux in France, from Stavanger in Norway, from Istanbul, from Izmir, from maybe other destinations also around this region. We are waiting for people coming from Lausanne in Switzerland, and I've probably forgotten a few. And we have a few, maybe a few people also on the chat coming from the US, from Denmark, from Mexico, Sweden, I mean, quite a bunch. So it was a great pleasure to have you, Pati. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, you're not here to taste all the beautiful things I see on the buffet behind us, but we'll try to make a doggy bag for you. So thank you so much. Just to give you an idea, I saw an image of Pati on Times Square with the release of her book, and you had Pati's face on Times Square in New York. So this is how important today is for Pati, because she's releasing this very expected cookbook. So thank you 1 million for being with us this morning.
Thank you so much, Camille. And I really wish I had been able to be there, but I really hope to visit you one day soon and invite passionate people that want to taste and try your city. They will spread the word.
Thank you so much, Pati. Have a beautiful day and talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, we didn't vlog. Hopefully she's still there. So thank you to all of you for your attention. We're going to take a 15-minute break to taste the wonderful food that's served behind. Maybe, Sirma, you want to say a few words about the food or not? I'm going to stop giving you the microphone if you don't want it. So we'll see you in 15 minutes. For the people who are with us online, sorry you can't taste the food either. But be back in 15 minutes for our roundtable where we'll be discussing the strategies of our 4 guest cities. Thank you very much.